Very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. My name is Ryan, and I have with me my able partner in crime, co-founder Soham Mehta, the OG. So Soham and I run Interview Kickstart. I'm sure most of you already know Interview Kickstart, so I won't get into the detailed spiel. But very quickly, Interview Kickstart, we are a platform that is set up to help engineers nail the toughest interviews, right? Prepare for and nail the toughest interviews at all the top companies. The unique thing about IK is that our curriculum, our instruction, all our classes, mock interviews are all developed and taught, right, by hiring managers, hiring committee members, team leads, technical recruiters from all the top companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and all the usual suspects. So these folks are right in the center. They're at the bleeding edge of the interview process. And they are the ones who teach, inspire, motivate, and support you as you move up your career ladder. We are born of a very simple belief. Our belief is if you are somebody who aspires to be at a top company, you're ambitious, and you're willing to work hard, right? We will provide you that pathway to get to the company of your dreams. Last year, we actually launched 15 different courses. And so now we have customized pathways for pretty much all the top areas in software engineering, machine learning, cloud, TPM, engineering management, a special course for students, back end, front end, full stack, Android, iOS, pretty much cybersecurity, pretty much all the top areas. So if you're an alum and you haven't seen these courses, please check us out. If you are somebody who's looking to nail their next technical interview, check us out. The best way to do this is by signing up for one of our webinars. Go to the website, sign up, and the rest we can take it from there. But today is not about that, right? Today is a session that Soham and I absolutely love doing. We do this session once a year. We reflect on the year gone by, and we try and identify trends, right, that we feel are going to play out in the year that is ahead. So in this case, in the year 2022, and some of these are trends that are overarching around a software career as a whole. And some of these, and many of these we will actually bring down and tell you how they impact you from an interviewing standpoint as well. We'll start by recapping the 2021 trends, because you have to hold yourself accountable, right, for what you projected. Luckily, in our case, almost all of them came true. Post that, we are going to break this, and this time we're going to do something very different. We are going to break today's session into two parts. Soham is going to talk about the trends that he sees playing out in 2022, right? I am then going to come back and talk to you about trends that I see that are just starting to take off. They're going to start taking off a bit in 2022, but these are trends that I believe will play out over the next 10, 20 years, right? And so what we're going to cover today is in the short arc of your career over the next 1 year, what should you be thinking about? And in the long arc of your career over the next 10 years or so, how can you think about trends that are likely to shape your career? If you have any question during the session, just feel free, right? Send the question on the Q&A tab. We that way you don't forget it, and we can take the questions when we come to the end of today's session. With that, without any further ado, let's jump in to look at where we thought 2021 was going to go and what really happened, right? So, recap of 2021. These guys were the 10 trends that we projected for 2021, right? The big ones were that we said that tech would continue to be the top place to work at 2021. That was absolutely true. As a result of COVID, all the multiple waves, tech came out very strong, right? Not only did tech come out very strong because of the changing, let's say, global environment, because of the hot money that was printed by the Feds, right? In the quantitative easing, a lot of that money actually found itself into tech, both in the public and private markets, right? And so tech continued to be the hottest place to work. FANG was still going to hold sway. And that is true. While you see in point 4 that there are some companies that are coming up to challenge the FANG companies, some of those did come up. I think Quora was a little bit of a miss. We don't think Quora is is as strong a player as we thought in 2021. I think on the FANG point, we got it all right, except the fact that FANG is no longer FANG, it's more MANG, right? So that was a bit of a miss, but we couldn't, these meta trends are things that are very difficult to identify.
One meta trend is to have a holding company these days, but yeah.
Well, exactly. Now, we are starting to see a lot of action, right, on the sides of the FANG companies, and you're seeing this globally. You started seeing this play out in the US. You started seeing this play out in Europe. Last year, you also started seeing this play out a lot in China, right? China big tech started coming under the regulatory, let's say, arm of the law, right? Quite significantly. We've already covered point 4. One more point in point 3. One of the things, though, that is happening is that an interesting counterbalance to the big companies is playing out, which is the other big companies themselves. And what we are starting to see is most of the top companies are now moving out of the silos they were in and are starting to compete with each other quite aggressively. Point 4, we covered engineers being part of the global talent pool. It's obviously playing out. We'll talk about that a lot more in terms of how remote is playing out. We did see significant increase in competition for all the FANG roles. We continue to see that. We are seeing compensation sustain, right? In fact, 2021, we at IK saw our highest offer. Prior to 2021, the highest offer was about $980,000. In 2021, we kind of went through the glass ceiling, which was the $1 million offer. And the highest offer that we have ever seen came in 2021. If memory serves me right, it was $1.264 or $1.267 million, right? Per year. Right, absolutely, per year. So one of our students ended up getting $1.267 or $1.264 million compensation per year. Obviously, this is cash plus equity, but that's a good indicator of the fact that compensation has continued to stay very, very high, right? For how long, right? That is the real question. And you're going to hear some of this in today's session as well. One of the things we saw in 2021, and we at IK reacted to that, is there is nothing like a software engineer anymore. Right? It's like saying I need to go to a doctor. There is no doctor. There is an oncologist. There is a general practitioner. There is a dentist. There's a vet. These are all completely different fields, right? And that's what happened to software engineering. Even the interview process now is highly customized based on the domain that you are in. And so, like I said, we at IK reacted to this and we launched 15 different domains to help people prepare. And that was based on just this trend, right? CS degrees becoming less important. That is true, but again, that is taking some time to play out. And the 2021, we projected that the interview process was going to be a little different from the past. It has changed, but not at the pace at which we thought it would change. So it has actually remained fairly standard, apart from the fact that it is now quite domain specific as well, right? So these were the top 10 trends that we projected for 2021. I would say we pretty much hit all on the spot. Now, the 2022 trends, right, which I'm going to hand over to Soham to take you through, really build on the trends that we have seen in 2021. A lot of what Soham's going to talk to you about is in the backdrop of what is happening at the macro level and what is happening geopolitically, right? These are things that affect the trends. Soham, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Yeah, a couple quick things on the 2021 trend, right? One is that in terms of turning big, right, NVIDIA wanted to buy ARM and government blocked it, right? I think that is something we had missed in some sense. We had missed NVIDIA becoming $1 trillion company. It went close, but government blocked the ARM deal just today in it. That was interesting. Quora and Lyft actually disappointed as well. Instead, Coinbase came about, which competed. In fact, Coinbase, Confluent, even Twitter's offers have gotten better. And this, all these Sunicorns or all these sort of these late stage startups are now competing with them. So we are quite on spot on, but not with Quora and Lyft as such. Lyft also comp is good, but Quora not as much. More so. Okay, yeah, 2022 trends. So let's look at what's likely to happen this year. Yeah. First, if you are wondering sort of where is the money going to move, right, for your career next, right? look at two areas. One is metaverse, and other is all this of crypto Web3 stuff. In metaverse, as you know, Facebook made a big bet. Now the jury is still out. If it's going to be like a thing or is it going to be just another fad. But everything pointing right now suggests that it is going to be, it's going in the right direction. Metaverse is, as you know, three parts to metaverse: AR, VR, and the devices. So VR by itself is unlikely to go very far, right? Because it needs some of this heavy equipment. AR will go further, as you know. Think of Pokemon that came about, and not just Pokemon, but now businesses have latched onto it, right? H&M has a strategy on that. Walmart has a strategy on that. Bigger companies are latching onto it, right? Like sort of this shopping in the metaverse, for example, right? The entire sort of consumer spending. Consumer spending is a $50 trillion industry moving to metaverse. I mean, that's sort of the opportunity there. There is going to be some hardware involvement as well. Glasses seem to be sort of what companies are latching onto. So if you are thinking of sort of where the money is going to move, that is one likely place. Right? You might have seen Facebook poached about 100 engineers from Microsoft for HoloLens as well. You might have seen Microsoft also made another bet with Blizzard, which is less about gaming. It's as much about metaverse as well. And McKinsey has advised CEOs to have strategy on crypto. Right. Crypto is not just Bitcoin. I'm sure you've noticed the ups and downs in the pricing and such, but don't get distracted by that. I mean, there are some applications which will lend itself to decentralization quite a bit, and so that's sort of the other area that we are watching. We have steadily seen number of jobs increase in last year, and that is likely to continue in these areas. Now, to be certain. These are not massively different skills from general software engineering skills. Right? There is some specificity in metaverse, some specificity in crypto and such, but it's not too much learning for it. So if you want to sort of get into crypto, possibly a month or two of part-time work is enough. And in metaverse as well, metaverse, you'll have to learn a bit on the gaming side or sort of this virtual reality side and such. Some of that will take some time. But those who have the backgrounds in computer vision, those of you who have backgrounds in image processing, those who have backgrounds in gaming, people like that can look forward to some really interesting money coming into that space. Right? Generally, get in early and ride the wave, right, for it. So. Again, is it going to be a massive trend in 2022? We're still waiting and watching, but these are two places where the jobs are increasing. The next trend, like I mentioned earlier, the $1 trillion thing has been breached, right? It's been breached for the last couple of years now, and more companies are getting close to it. Nvidia is the one that got closest this year at 900 billion. Visa, JP Morgan, Samsung are following. They're at about $500 billion at this point. And Salesforce and Shopify are further away, but they are very strong leaders in their own space. And so watch out for them. Certainly not next year. I don't expect Salesforce and Shopify go next year. But Nvidia, Visa, JP Morgan, Samsung, you should watch out. And what does that mean for your careers, right? So some of these companies, like Visa, for example, has not shown evidence of believing in solid technical talent as such. And they don't invest very much. They invest some in some roles they do. But it's possible that Visa might change strategy also. JP Morgan and Samsung have shown in the past that they want to invest in good talent in many areas. And so has Nvidia. Nvidia obviously is a tier one company. What we are trying to say is that you can look forward to solid stability in these companies, and not just man companies either. Like Nvidia, JP Morgan, Samsung also, like, they are not going away, and they're here to stay. You can get stability, you can get good careers. So consider them as well. Right? On this. The other interesting part here to notice is that Shopify is not a US based company. The vast majority of their operations are actually in Canada, engineering as well. And so you will see these companies come out from all over the world now. right? And Ryan, in sort of the next phase of this presentation, will touch on some of these internationalization trends as well. But keep an eye out on some of these companies coming out from different parts of the world. Yeah. So that's the second thing we're watching. The third one. This is very interesting, right? There was a time when everybody and their parents thought that software engineering is the thing, right? And it's only the software engineers who can get awesome careers at tech companies, right? But now that has we see that spreading out of software engineering. Software engineers still get solid careers, not to mean otherwise, but all the adjacent roles, right? When a data analyst wakes up in the morning, they are wondering if they can work for a tier one company, right? Company that has a lot of data versus some random company which doesn't have a lot of data to work with. Right? So this tech DNA, the tech thing, right, is getting into other parts of the society as well, right? In 2011, if you remember, we often cover this as part of our orientation in the program, that Mark Andreessen wrote an article that said software is eating the world, right? And we are now seeing that, right? Like, we are now seeing the effects of it in practically everything that we do, right? And that is rolling into other roles also. So in this year, we anticipate a lot of people starting to think about moving from more traditional companies to more like modern tech-enabled companies, regardless of the roles they are in, not just software engineers, right? Like, for example, it is like I'm having conversations with people who want to move from Honda to Rivian, right? Automotive engineers who are trained mechanical engineers, right? And they do digital CAD/CAM design as well as mechanical design. Right? They are working at Honda and they are looking up to Rivian. And why are they looking up to Rivian? Right? Rivian makes trucks, those self-driving trucks and such. And so Rivian is run like a software company, right? Rivian's multiples are like a software company, right? And Rivian's career ladders are like that of software company. Right? So these things are sort of moving as well. So if you or anybody in your network, right, is currently working in a traditional company, this is an opportunity to tell them that, hey, look to this other side, right? There are now pathways available to get there, right? And get much better careers, right? So that's the other thing we're watching this year happening. Okay, next. Fourth, interviews are getting more standardized and hence prep getting more specialized. So as these companies are growing bigger, like we talked about, $500 billion companies to more $1 trillion companies, and generally, like, those companies which are leaders in their space, right, are just growing, right? One interesting reason they are growing is because just availability of capital, which Ryan will talk about a bit later as well. But as a company grows, right, you need to hire more people in a certain role, right? So a given role, let's say data analyst, right? You need to hire then 10, 20, 30, 40 data analysts. When you have 40 data analysts to be hired, you need to standardize the damn interview process. There is no way to really not do that, right? Otherwise, as a company, you will just suffer. So we are seeing more interviews getting standardized, right? We will see, like we saw last year, and next year also we'll see more and more just roles, the interview processes for different roles getting standardized, not just in software. See, software, the patterns are relatively understood, right? Algorithms, systems design, domain, and soft skills, right? Which is what we cover at IK. We will see data analyst interview process get standardized, hardware interview process gets standardized, right? We will see other sort of adjacent roles in software, those interview processes get standardized, right? And as the interview processes get more standardized, prep will become more specialized, right? You will be able to structurally prep for these as well. You will see cloud coming in, right? Cloud penetration is about 15-20%. And even where they are penetrated, right, the number of workflows that are on cloud is about 25%, 30% at best, right? So So you will see cloud adoption as well, and then there's going to be a lot of roles, like even specialized roles within cloud, right, which will have standardized interview processes, right, in this. So look forward to like a lot of companies posting for Azure cloud specialists, right, in different ways, architects or solution engineers or this or that, um, and those things getting standardized, right, and companies posting roles about GCP, right? Google in its public filings has said the cloud, they expect cloud and GCP to grow 3x in the next 5 years, right? It's just mind-boggling for it. So that cloud is going to make a big impact in the next 5 years in terms of jobs, right, as well, and interview standardization. Because of metaverse that we discussed, right, and China losing a bit of steam, we are also going to see more hardware opportunities, and those hardware jobs are going to get more standardized, right, coming in. So that's another thing that that we are watching in next year, right, as you navigate your job searches. Okay. Engineers using interview prep to move into new domains. Yes. So you see, whenever sort of money moves into new things, right, you don't have talent that is available, right, in that. Like say metaverse. Talk about metaverse, for example. Like if H&M has a strategy, Walmart has a strategy in metaverse. They are posting a bunch of roles in metaverse. Even any other company as well. They are unlikely to find 100 engineers in metaverse. Right? What are they going to do? Right? They are going to just interview in a relatively standard way with some knowledge of metaverse. Right? And so for somebody who wants to move into metaverse, right, they can take the interview prep route to move to metaverse, right, versus a university degree route, right, to move to metaverse. Right? Universities, first of all, are unlikely to catch up. But even if those who do, like there ain't going to be a requirement for a certification from Berkeley for metaverse before a job is done, right? As long as you can clear the interview with some basics and fundamentals and stuff, like you'll generally be okay. Right? So, and obviously your experience, right, will count, right, as such. Like your existing experience in a different domain, right, moving to the other domain, right, will count. So interview prep as a thing to move to new domains, right, is also something that we are watching. Right? That people are coming to us also with those kinds of requests. Right? There are many adjacent roles also where this is going to be true, not just like new industries like metaverse and cryptos, but even something like moving into TPM, for example. TPM often does not need university certifications, right? But it needs certain amount of knowledge, right? And also that role doesn't necessarily need a lot of experience for entry level, right, as such. And so interview prep as a route to get there is actually a very real possibility, and we are actually seeing that as well in coming up in the next year. So those are the 5, and that's the 5th one. Yeah. Right.
Awesome. All right, guys. So before we move to the trends that we have started seeing, kicking off in, let's say, in 2021, likely to become important in 2022, and then for the next decade. Couple of important things, guys. There are obviously a bunch of other trends that we are seeing, right? But we try to capture the top 5, right? So don't obviously take from this that there are only 5 key trends. There are others as well, but these are the top 5 that we saw. The other thing that I wanted to mention, Soham mentioned about the companies that we see becoming $1 trillion companies. Please don't take that as investment advice and go and invest, your money there. That is not what we are.
That is correct. Sorry, I forgot.
At all. Yeah, that's not what we are advocating here at all. We think that these are important companies to keep in mind from a career perspective, right? From a career perspective, it is good to join good to hitch your wagon to a star, and that's really what Sam was indicating there. With these 5 trends, right? Where do we think there are trends that are starting to play out, right? These might be like micro trends, but they're starting to play out in really macro ways, and we expect these trends to play out over the next multiple decades. The first one is I'm sure many of you have seen the movie Jerry Maguire. Jerry Maguire is actually one of my favorite movies. In that movie, there's an epic scene where Tom Hanks and his manager, Rod Tidwell, who is Cuba Gooding Jr., are actually in this conversation, and they're both saying the same thing, which is show me the money, right? Show me the money, honey. And that is what happened over the last few years, right? There was extraordinary amount of money that has been printed. um, with most accounts, more money has been printed in the US and globally in the last couple of years compared to the time from the time the dollar started till now. There has never been a period where so much money has been printed in such a short period of time. I think of the dollars in circulation, double digit percentage of those dollars were printed in the last couple of years, right? And so what we are seeing is that money or capital as a factor of production is no longer a big constraint, right? And that has some very significant implications. Where has all that money gone, right? And the easiest way to look at where that money is gone is to look at valuations, right? Public company valuations, developing country stock markets, private companies, largely tech, right? One way of assessing this is to look at the price of real estate in all tech hubs, right? So a lot of money has been printed. There is a lot of money out there, but that is no longer the challenge at all, right? If you have a good idea, if you have a business that needs money, there is more money than deals available right now. There is more money than good companies available right now. And so the constraint has moved to tech talent. And so today it's all about show me the tech talent. You talk to any leader of a public company, successful company, fast growing company, startup, venture capitalist, the primary thing that they are worried about is tech talent. It actually plays out very well for us at Interview Kickstart because we are bang in the center of that trend. But there are some very interesting implications that all of you need to keep in mind. One is that given this, there is huge scarcity, right, of tech talent. And so this is one of those trends that we feel will actually lead compensation in tech to continue increasing, right? The other thing that we are seeing is the emergence of hybrid talent partnerships, right? I'll give you an example that's very close to us. Recently, a couple of months ago, one of the FANG or MANG companies, right, has reached out to us and they want to have a exclusive partnership with us where we will be called in to train all the candidates that failed their interview process, but that came very close, right? So the near misses, they're going to send them to us. They're actually going to pay us to train that talent because they buy into the program. And once that talent finishes the IK program, they will then go back to this FANG company, MANG company, right? And they will have a shortened interview process, right? So this is something that's completely new in the last many years that we have been in existence. We have seen companies often wanting to hire students, alumni reaching out to us saying, hey, can you constantly suggest folks that we can hire? But we've never been in a position where we've seen one of the top 5 companies, right? One of the FANG companies actually reach out and say, hey guys, talent is so scarce for us that we would love for you to train folks who are not making it past our interviews because we value what you have created and we need that talent, right? So the next 10 years are going to be incredibly bright for tech talent because that is now becoming the number one factor of production, right? That is scarce. Much, much more importantly, this is now the intersection of actually 2 trends. One trend is that there's plenty of money, and so money is not scarce. The second is all the companies that are growing really fast today are, and they have been for the last few years, they are knowledge companies. The third thing that's happening, and some kind of talked about this earlier, what Mark Andreessen said, right, which is software is eating the world, is starting to play out now in the form of all companies becoming tech companies. That we kind of knew. But the other thing that's happening right now is all jobs are becoming tech jobs. even outside software engineering, right? You hire a salesperson, they need to know how to manage HubSpot, right? You hire a marketing person, they need to understand the digital tools of the trade, right? So overall, this is, I would say, the number one overarching trend over the next decade, which is that tech talent in all its shapes and forms is going to become the number one constraint. It's very scarce, and there is going to be an immense fight for this talent. Because there is an immense fight for this talent, you see trend number two, which is engineers have arrived on the broader map. And here by map, we actually mean the map of the world, right? The globe. Because tech talent and tech companies are so much in demand, we are now starting to see countries, and within countries, cities, starting to create policies to fight to attract this talent. Imagine how cool that is. If you are an engineer, cities are starting to fight for you. Cities are starting to create policies that attract you to them. Obviously, remote is enabling this, and countries are doing exactly the same, right? Let's look at a couple of examples. Last year on Clubhouse, right, there was a very, very interesting moment early in the year where there was this debate between Francis Suarez, who was the mayor of Miami, and the mayor of SF at that point of time, and a couple of other, I think LA, a couple of other cities. And they were all talking about things that they are doing specifically to attract tech talent. That show actually got a lot of buzz because the mayors literally went at each other and they were accusing each other of taking citizens and talent from their cities, because this is a talent pool that everybody wants, right? It's high earning, high spending, pay high tax, right? So within the US itself, we are going to see cities starting to compete very aggressively for all of this talent. We've already seen it happening, and we think that this is going to continue to play out over the next many, many years, right? In the form of tax breaks, SOPs, interesting things that you can do in the cities being positioned against each other. But you're also seeing this happening across countries. One of the countries that is taking a lead in this is ironically Dubai in the UAE, right? Dubai is not known as a traditional tech hub. But with oil going the way it is, and with climate change being real, the Dubai government has realized that they need to attract the next frontier of industries, which is really tech, right? And so the Dubai government is actively promoting what's called the golden visa, right? The golden visa is a kind of permanent residency, the equivalent of a green card in the US. And that is being given to tech entrepreneurs, to scientists, and to engineers, because Dubai has publicly stated that they want in the next 10 years to be a technology and science hub, right? So if you are an engineer, global mobility has arrived. All top cities, all top countries are fighting for you. And this is only going to intensify over the next couple of years. All of this is in many ways brought on by remote. Now, there was a question earlier saying, are remote interviews going to continue? Yes, they are absolutely going to continue.
Sorry, before you move on to remote, there's a lot to say about remote, but one other interesting observation before that is many of the CEOs are now engineers as well, right? And some of the Indian CEOs that we saw come about last year in companies from IBMs to Twitter.
Parag at Twitter.
Engineers, So it's a very, 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 very interesting trend. Like, so this engineering is becoming from a king in the corner to like an infrastructure layer.
So, coming back to remote, right? And the question that was asked, yes, remote interviews are likely to continue because this is a secular trend, right? Talent has moved well beyond the Bay Area. And actually, it's playing out in much larger context than just remote interviews, because everybody's talking about DeFi, right? Soham talked about crypto. Soham talked about blockchain. There's a lot of talk around DeFi. But what is going unnoticed is what I call the decentralization of access, right? It is something that is playing out in all aspects. Now, what do I mean by the decentralization of access? The decentralization of access is playing out both for companies and for individuals, right? Companies now can access talent across the globe and are no longer restricted to the 2020 kind of tech hub, right? They no longer have to be in SF. They no longer have to be in the Bay Area. They no longer have to be in Austin. They no longer have to be in the US, right? And so the democratization of access is causing companies to look beyond their shores, beyond their offices, beyond their cities, right? It is also creating a very unique opportunity for global tech talent. Today, we are starting to see compensation for engineers in places like India go through the roof, right? And that is because this is now becoming a global talent pool where people have access to top engineers. There's a question that just come in on Canada. Canada is also seeing the benefit of that. Many companies from the US are now starting to hire very actively in Canada, right? So much so that we as a company are seeing so much demand from Canada that in the next couple of weeks to a month, right, we are going to launch a course that targets Canadian engineers, right? That is the value and the power of remote. So what does this mean for you as an engineer? In the short term, right, you are likely to see significantly more increase in competition. I would say maybe in the medium term, right? You're going to see a lot more competition for the top roles at top companies. As an engineer in the Bay Area or in New York or in Austin, kind of tech hubs, till now, you kind of had location as an advantage, right? Because interviews were either local or when they were remote, right? It was still kind of within a geographical boundary. Last year, we saw one of our students get a job in Google and the student stays in Hawaii, right? We've never seen that. That is going to start playing out. So how will that play out for you guys, right? In the short term, companies are going to start looking overseas, but in a couple of years, an engineer in the Bay Area is going to be as good as an engineer in Boston, is going to be as good as an engineer in Berlin, as good as an engineer in Bangalore, and as good as an engineer in Beijing. So there is going to be a lot more competition for these top jobs. Interviews are going to become much more competitive. The pool is going to become much larger, and the bar is going to go up very, very significantly. That is one trend that we see happening. The other is the democratization of compensation. So if this trend plays out the way we think it will, this is going to be a bit of a drag on compensation in the US. And compensation in other parts of the world might actually go up much, much more. What is also going to happen is that there will be the odd company that will bet against remote, right? Saying that, hey, I don't want remote to grow fast. I need to be in a physical location, physical proximity. There will be new working models, right? And that might be a counter trend to this. But overall, we see this as one of the biggest trends playing out over the next 10 years, which is the decentralization of access. As the saying goes, yeah, sorry, Tom, you had something?
Sorry, yeah, just one thing. There is a question on the Q&A, and I think this compensation thing as well. So, folks, I think what we are likely to see is two types of companies in remote, right? Within remote, like not saying companies that bet on remote versus companies that don't bet on remote, but among the companies that bet on remote, there'll be a set of companies which will give location agnostic compensation. And there'll be a set of companies which will give location based compensation, right? And generally speaking, companies which give location agnostic compensation will attract better talent. So that is how the bifurcation is also likely to happen. So for those of you who are wondering what should you be doing and things like that, like there are like companies like Coinbase, they pay something very similar to somebody in Bangalore versus somebody in the Bay Area. Right? So look out for that. They will all start location specific, right? And some of the companies will race to become location agnostic.
So there's a very good question actually vis-a-vis remote, which I
Yeah.
just saw, which is, will remote work continue or will we need to be in office? We don't know for sure, but I think it depends on the variants of COVID that come about. But what we do think is happening is that the way companies used to work it's never going back, right? It's never going back to the way it was. Some companies are going to try hybrid. Hybrid seems very difficult to work because hybrid is kind of optimized for people who are physically in the office. But what we are seeing is that there are unique work modes, right, that are coming up. And so my sense is, even if you return back to office, it is going to be it's never going to be the way it was, right? It's going to be some sort of hybrid mode where some employees are going to be remote. And one of the reasons is now COVID's been with us for almost 2 years. Early March will be 2 years. And so in that period of time, a lot of people have already left, right? These cities and have gotten used to remote. They've gotten used to the lower cost of living, the better facilities, maybe more sun. And so it's going to be very difficult to bring those people back, right? So keep that in mind and keep the fact that this talent is scarce. So you can't really see companies enforcing everybody to come back to the office. So at best, it's going to be hybrid. All right. So, we've got 2 more points to go. Then we should get done on the hour and then take Q&A, right? 1 hour since we started, and then we should do Q&A. Inflation, right? Inflation is everywhere. I don't think the US government, nor any of the other governments, realized the pace at which inflation was going to show its head. We all knew it was coming because of the amount of money being printed. Nobody knew that it would come so fast. Why has inflation come so fast? It's actually come so fast, not just because of printing money. That is the monetary side of it, right? But it's because of labor shortage and supply side constraints. What has happened is all the things that would move inflation have come together at the same time. And so it's like a perfect storm. A lot of money was printed. So there is more cash. Inflation obviously goes up. In the meantime, there was scarcity of labor, right? And why scarcity of labor? Because many people used remote to rethink their careers. Periodic spikes in COVID, right, have led to people being not available, right? And so you're seeing massive labor shortage, right? Omicron has highlighted this a lot because of how transmutive the virus is. So many people are getting it at the same time. And although it's not as critical as Delta, because of the sheer volumes of people getting it, right? Especially in places where vaccination rates are low, and in audiences where the vaccination rates are low, there is inability for large swaths of people to come to work. They're either sick themselves or they're taking care of other sick people. So there's labor shortage. High price, labor shortage. Both cause inflation. The third thing is global supply chains have been hit, right? And that is always a cause of shortage. You see, there is a huge shortage, for example, in semiconductors available, right? And pit that against the fact that now we're thinking about the metaverse. Prices go up, right? So at every step in the economic funnel, right, in the economic stack, you are seeing inflation come about. And so what's happening, right? Who benefits from inflation? When there is inflation, compensation goes up, money goes into tech, right? Because interest rates are kept low. The Fed has recently announced in their last meeting that they will raise interest rates. In fact, they have a meeting that's happening very soon where they're going to announce whether they will cut interest rates a couple of times or more than that, and at what speed, right? So a lot to watch out for, right? A lot happening in the next few days. The impact of inflation is going to be, and what the Fed does is going to be felt very significantly on tech, right? One, when quantitative easing is stopped or slowed down, a lot of this so-called free money is going to get sucked out, right, of the ecosystem. That hot money has gone to tech. And so a lot of that is going to be pulled out. Where is it going to be pulled out from? It's going to be pulled out from tech, right? If you look at the drop in indexes over the last month and a half, which indexes have dropped the most? All cryptocurrency has fallen massively. In some cases, 30% to 50%, right? Second, public markets, right? Public markets have fallen, but very interesting way to look at public markets falling. If you look at the public markets and you look at the UK public markets, which is the FTSE versus the S&P and the NASDAQ, you see a very telling story. While all of these have fallen, the degree in which they've fallen differs a lot. The UK FTSE has barely fallen. Why? Because that is a index that is built on heavy industries and oil, right? Those have not corrected as much. The S&P, which is the broader index of the world, which has tech as well as non-tech, has fallen more than the FTSE, but fallen much less than the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ has fallen a lot more, right? Now, this might be a short-term blip, right? I don't think this is anything to be, fundamentally worried about. And, I don't think we're at a stage where compensation is going to crash. Nothing like that, because the counterbalancing forces of labor shortage, these companies growing, all of these actually point to inflation, compensation increasing, right? But this is going to be a bit of a drag, right? And so watch inflation closely, and let's see how it pans out. How this pans out over the next few years, and usually inflation is a 5 to 7 year cycle, right? Is going to be a very important factor in how tech moves, okay, and tech compensation moves. Now, the last trend that we have for today is COVID has led to a bunch of really interesting things, right? You're seeing it being called many different things. The great resignation, the great reshuffle, the great switch, right? All of these are playing out. The great resignation is the fact that people use COVID. People realize that, hey, life is short. You can't predict what happens, right? So am I really doing what I love, right? Do I want to surf the web or do I want to surf on the beach, right? And many people left their jobs, right? They decided that the other kind of surfing was more fun, right? You also are seeing the great reshuffle, which is large swaths of people doing what Soham was saying, deciding to actually move into more modern tech-enabled companies. So many companies like a Honda or a Toyota, right, are losing some of their top talent to companies like Tesla, Rivian, right, across the board, and you're seeing a reshuffling of the labor force, right, moving much more to tech-enabled companies. And the last one is the great switch. I'm sure all of you will connect with this when I tell you what the great switch is. It's essentially switching jobs. LinkedIn and Indeed as well last year published something very interesting. An average software engineer now spends 18 months in their job before they switch. 18 months to 2 years, right? Compared this with, let's say, somebody like my dad, right? 2 generations ago. He spent 40 years in the same company, right? At best, people were changing 1 or 2 jobs. Now, people have multiple careers and multiple jobs in a career. Interviewing, leveling up is being seen as one of the best ways to increase your compensation, right? And so you're seeing this happen a lot. We see people who come in, they pay the $6,000-7,000 for the course. They spend 3 months, and in anywhere from 3 to 6 months, they see increments of $100,000 to $200,000. $75,000 to $125,000 is very common, right? So that's a 10x return in a few months. And people are constantly doing that. coming to IK and doing it by themselves, right? That is how they do it is less important, right? This great switch, the great reshuffle, great resignation is playing out en masse, right? What does this mean for your career? There are changed working modes now. Remote is one change. Shorter careers, another change. Interviewing more often, third change. Always needing to be interview ready, fourth change, right? Who knows when you get these crazy opportunities? You always need to have your A game up. We are also seeing, though, a whole bunch of new career opportunities. With this new stack of working, right? With remote, the decentralization of access being right at the center, there is need for a whole new set of tools. Even at the company stack, there is a new set of tools, right? We are a fully remote company. It is very difficult and it takes extraordinary amount of work to engage all employees at a company, right? In a physical location, it's very easy. There will be tools that will come out for things like this. You're already seeing tools, right, that are available on Zoom. There are standalone products, all of these, and many, many more opportunities, right? Whole new companies. You are seeing companies coming out that enable global payments, right, for individuals, right? Payroll, enabling payroll. So like this, there are going to be a lot of companies, communication is obviously one, digital health coming out in, company stack, lots of really interesting startups. If you're looking to start something, that's a very good place to look. New career opportunities, new tools coming out. Since you've quoted Mark Anderson multiple times, right? Let's end with what Mark Anderson said. It's time to build. You're seeing new companies, new tools, new careers, cities competing, right? All of this points to the fact that the next 10 years are super interesting for engineers. So quick recap, guys. We have 2 minutes left and then let's take Q&A. Here are the trends that we see for 2022 and beyond. Emergence of overarching technical trends. These are huge, right? We are watching them with cautious optimism. Like AI played out and affected all companies, crypto, metaverse, likely to play out, affect many, many different types of companies. Like Som pointed out, all CTOs will need to have some sort of crypto strategy in place. Companies are going to think about how they are going to get affected by the metaverse. For all of you sports men and women here, very interesting thing recently in the metaverse, the Australian Open, first Grand Slam tennis tournament to be live on the metaverse, right? It's taking place at this point as we speak. Billions are so 2020, 2021, trillions are the new game in town. Lots of companies, Samsung, Visa, Nvidia, bunch of other companies, JP Morgan, likely to get to this $1 trillion. Shopify, Salesforce, maybe a little bit behind, but a bunch of companies getting there. Interesting space to watch. Beyond tech, careers are now moving where people are saying, even in things like hardware, I want to move to a hardware company, but that is more tech enabled. Som gave the example of somebody wanting to move from a Honda to, let's say, Rivian. Interview prep, more standardized. You're going to follow the same processes. The process that started at top companies, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, is now across the board. You're also seeing this, however, become much more specialized because, like we said last year, the software engineering term is dead. It's much more domain specific. And an interesting trend that we are constantly seeing is people wanting to use interview prep as a way to switch into a new career, right? I'm a backend engineer. I want to spend some time learning the basics. I want to learn how to interview and I want to combine those two and I want to move into a top company as a machine learning engineer. We are seeing this across the board and we will be doubling down on this as a trend in the year to come as well. Trends that I covered over the next decade, tech talent is the number one constraint to scaling. That is really the factor of production that everybody's trying to get hold of. And as a result of that, engineers are now being competed for by countries, by cities, by governments across the world. Remote is allowing this to take place because there is decentralization of access. You can work from anywhere. companies are thinking global, talent is thinking global. All of these are very, very strong pros. Inflation is something to watch out for, right? It's something that you need to keep in mind. It's going to play out over a 5, 6, 7 year cycle, but good to just know what's going on. And COVID has changed the way we work. We aren't going back to the way we worked before. It's reshaping the entire labor force, and there are tons of career opportunities, tons of interesting products that can be built as a result of all of this. All of this points to one very simple fact. And that fact is, it is a super exciting time to be an ambitious, aspirational software engineer, somebody who wants to make the most of their career. Guys, I'm going to throw this open to questions. There are a lot of questions that are coming up on Q&A. I think Soham's been answering a lot of them. The team has been answering a lot of them. But please feel free to ask your questions on Q&A. We will go back to some of the questions that have been answered already, and give more flavor. Quick thing before we get to Q&A, because this session was an hour plus 30 minutes for Q&A, we weren't able to get into all the trends in the level of detail that we would have liked. So and I would have loved to discuss these trends in a lot more detail, debate them out, if you may. And so over the next couple of weeks, we are going to drop videos on LinkedIn, right? So do follow us on LinkedIn, follow Interview Kickstart, follow Soham, follow me. We are going to drop videos where we are going to be discussing each of these trends and some of the other trends that we weren't able to pick up, right? And add a lot more color to these. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, you follow us on social, you should get access and you should be able to see some of those. And we will do those over the next couple of months. And as new things develop, as we are seeing new things come up and play out, we will talk about those as well. Thanks, guys. Let's now look at questions. I think most of the questions have been answered. So I think there are a lot of questions about IK. Guys, if you have questions about the course, I'm going to actually not take those today because they are best answered by reaching out to us. Just send an email to start at interviewkickstart.com, or sign up for one of our webinars, right, on the website, and we'll take you through what we do in detail, and you can ask us all your questions there. Today's set of questions, let us restrict to the trends, right? What are some of the trends that you're seeing and questions that might come up vis-a-vis that, okay? So while the team is answering the questions about IK, I'm going to go through the questions that were already answered. I think there are a whole bunch of them, and I'm going to add some color, right, based on the trends that we've looked at. So Rishi has asked a question, right, saying, how do you see the metaverse expanding in a global setting? There was a question earlier also, which I will link to. And the earlier question was, how do you see metaverse expanding in a physical setting, right? The question there was about, one of the things that person who asked the question read was, so don't answer the questions on chat, right? Let's take the questions publicly, right? And answer them verbally, except the ones about Interview Kickstart, right? That way everybody can benefit from the answers. So Rishi's question is, how do you see the metaverse expand? There was a question earlier that also talked about, do you see the metaverse expanding for physical events? You're already seeing, the metaverse expand in many different ways, right? Let's look at some of the ways people are getting into it. So obviously Facebook taking the lead, renaming themselves as Meta, right? Huge move, betting massively. Facebook's a global player, right? Beyond the metaverse as well, even in terms of crypto, you've seen Facebook and Twitter enable NFTs on their platform, right? So you're seeing this play out across the board. But a couple of very interesting things that are coming out as opportunities, right? Apple betting big on glasses, right? Which are AR and VR combined. Facebook obviously has Oculus. Look at some of the interesting trends, right? All the gaming companies are also well positioned for the metaverse, right? Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard. One of the reasons they bought Activision Blizzard is obviously the amazing franchise of games like Call of Duty and all the others. But these are worlds in themselves. right? You look at some of the other gaming companies, Fortnite, right? By Epic Games, again, a game in itself. So there are many ways in which this is going to expand. From a gamer perspective, one of the things where metaverse and crypto comes together is NFTs, currency that you earned in one game, can be actually spread to another game, right? Digital assets that are in one game can be spread to another game, right? So there's a bunch of stuff that could go on in the physical world. One of the areas which is a killer app, right, for metaverse is shopping, right? H&M has already launched a shop in the metaverse, right? There is land that people are buying. I'm not sure how good or bad investment that is. The Australian Open, right? Gaming event, sporting event being held in the metaverse. Coldplay did a concert on Fortnite, right? So I think it is a, one has to reimagine the world, right? I'm not sure if it will be all pervasive and it's going to be like Ready Player One, where we are just in that world. My hypothesis, and it's just a hypothesis, there's an interesting article in The Economist that has actually come out, is that it's going to be a hybrid, right? It is going to be a hybrid between Web 2 and Web 3, but there will be applications like shopping, like concerts, which one would have typically consumed in the physical world, which will also be available, right, to consume in the in the metaverse. So, do you have anything that you want to add around how the metaverse could expand in global settings, physical settings? Others, I'll just move on to some of the other questions.
No. I don't think anybody knows really. Right? Like, it's not like
it's just bets.
There is a blueprint that anybody has seen. These are all bets, and we are seeing big players making that bet now. So just watch out, right, as such. And we at IK will try to help there as well this year, 2022.
Yeah. So there are a bunch of people that have said, how do I get into metaverse? Some people are saying as students, some people are saying as working professionals. So we are actually going to launch a course on how to get into the metaverse, right? We're going to launch a course on the metaverse, on crypto, some of these new opportunities. So watch out, right? We will be launching these courses fairly soon, and those could be ways to break in. All the top companies are recruiting in this area, right? So just watch out for that. Raghav says, hey, will there be any remaining advantages software engineers living in tech hubs as remote adoption continues to increase and compensation becomes location agnostic? So Raghav, multiple points there. I think compensation is going to become location agnostic, but like Soham said, our view is that there are going to be two types of companies. The type of company like a Coinbase, which says, I don't care where you are, I compensate for the role, right? And then there are going to be some companies that say, I kind of don't care where you are, I'm going to compensate for the role, but adjusted by location, right? And so they will have maybe some hubs where the pay is higher and some hubs where it's slightly lower. Why would people stay in the tech hubs today? Many of the tech hubs today are places where there is actually fantastic weather, right? Tech hubs tend to develop in places where there is fantastic weather. That might be a reason to stay. Plus, I think it's not going to happen overnight, right? It will take some time to play out. From a startup perspective, it still is quite interesting to be in some of these tech hubs like the Bay Area, because there is an ecosystem that is built there, right? There is Stanford, there is Sandhill, there is the VCs, there is the big companies, startups, all in that area, and that is going to be tough to replicate overnight, right? So I think we have some time for the tech hubs to kind of be less interesting, but you're going to start seeing it play out at an individual level, right? Where I might want to be in Austin, right? Or I might want to be in Lisbon, right? Because I like to surf or because the weather is great. You will start seeing it play out. I don't think it's going to happen immediately, right? That's why it's a trend over the next 10 years or so.
Yeah. And I think this, you should take advantage of remote and travel, right? When I traveled to India during COVID, right, and I stayed for an extended time, I realized that like metaverse and crypto have no effect on this geography at this point. Right? The caste system still rules, for example, right? And there are many countries in the world which are even questioning democracy, right, and such. And so those factors will weigh on compensation on locations and how this remote thing actually starts to play out. So it is going to take some time when some of these trends like fructify. But the directionally is what Ryan means.
We have people at IK, for example, who are constantly traveling, right? And working, because we are fully remote. We don't care where you work from, right? And so we have people all over the world on the team, and it really doesn't matter where you stay. So yeah, take advantage of remote, take advantage of spending time in different places, lower cost cities as well, right? So a bunch of things that one could do. I'm going to continue with the questions. Okay, so Francis, I see your question is about when to start IK. Again, I'm not going to take those. Just somebody from the team might answer them, or just send us an email at start@interviewkickstart.com, or join in for the webinar. You'll get a bunch of answers.
So let's take Raghav, the new grad question. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No. Sorry. Go ahead, Sam. I was going to take.
I think you already answered Raghav's question, no?
No, he's asked another interesting question, which I think which is very helpful for everybody, which is, how do you keep yourself informed about these emerging facts and trends? Any recommended sources that you follow apart from social? So Raghav, I'll tell you how I do it, and I'll let Sam answer how he does it. I find that there are two ways to do this. One is you read a lot, just be curious, listen to a bunch of podcasts, right? I've actually realized that blogs are better than books, right? So blogs, social, you follow people on Twitter, they point you to the best blogs, the best podcasts. They're better than books because they're much more current, right? They're also shorter to read. And so if you don't have time, they're a great way to come up to speed. Courses, if you want to do, but I end up spending a lot of time on blogs, and more, in my case, more podcasts, because I can do that while I'm doing something else. The other thing that I find as an incredible way to stay up to date is to talk to startup founders, right? I angel invest, and so I end up talking to a lot of startup founders. Startup founders and people in the early stage ecosystem are usually always thinking about the future, right? Because they can't build a business for today because somebody else has already built that. And so I find that talking to smart people, along with some amount of reading blogs, listening to podcasts, I also have Soham. We talk a lot. We discuss a lot of things. And so, he also helps me remain abreast with what's going on, just our conversation. So this is what I typically do. Soham, how do you stay informed? Are you just porting yourself into the metaverse and listening to everybody?
No, I'm not in the metaverse yet.
Don't lie.
In the metaverse yet, yeah.
I've seen your avatar.
But then, if you've seen my avatar, then you are also there. So, so the point is this. I think the world is making a shift from news to curated news, right? So I've stopped watching news as such. Like that is not the thing. Right? There is
I don't watch or read. I don't read newspapers. I don't watch the news. It's just PR. News is just PR.
News just PR. Right? Most of it is paid, and it's just like a lot of crap in there. And most of the news, like it's clickbait. They put out news which more people will read and not just provide value. Even Google these days is becoming like so useless. The first page is just becoming very, very useless for me. So is Quora. In any case, I tend to follow people. Just follow some people who would do things like, and there are still some news sources which have maintained their quality. Like Hacker News has maintained its quality. If you are in tech, there is Substack now, where several people put out newsletters. Like they aggregate things on areas you are interested in, right? And they put it out. So look at Substack and subscribe to some of those, right? But like, for example, if you're interested in politics, in fact, the top 2 or 3 newsletters on Substack are actually politics newsletters, right? And they do a really, really good unbiased commentary on it as well. There are newsletters on everything from relationships to crypto to tech trends to like daily news and things like that. So that's another source that is coming out. And behind those newsletters is a well-meaning person, right? And so we are following that person. We're not following a newsletter. We're following a person. Right?
Yeah, Twitter is actually a great place to follow good people.
Twitter is another place. Twitter has started to work now as such as well. Twitter is another place. Twitter can become overwhelming if you're not discerning with who you follow. These days, again, there are a lot of people who keep posting threads on Twitter, hoping to get some sort of a following, as if following is what they're going to take to their grave.
Threads are the new tweets. But, threads are the new tweets, dude.
Threads are the new tweets, and so there's a lot of just like randomized threads, like people copying each other kinds of threads and stuff like that. So you have to be very careful in curating. Right, so Twitter still needs curation. Right? I don't want to do curation. Right? Like that's really sort of where I'm coming to. And so I only want to do little curation of people. And so I'll say, okay, I'll follow these 2 or 3 or 5 people. Like Mark Anderson actually writes very well, thinks very deeply. And so following him on either Clubhouse or his blog on Anderson Horowitz, right, and such. And so follow few people in your interest areas is really the sum and substance of what I'm trying to say today. The amount of knowledge in the world has just gone up so much, right, that we see it in many different ways, not just in news, right? It's very difficult to keep up, right, like what people are saying, but you see it in an extreme, right? The average age of Nobel Prize winners is also going up because you just need to know so much before you can now make a groundbreaking discovery. You think of data engineering, the depth in data engineering today is very different from 5 years ago, and that is why domains like data engineering and SRE are becoming a thing in interviews, right? So the amount of knowledge is just increasing quite a bit. It's just practically impossible to keep up with that unless you narrow down your interest areas and follow specific people. That is the way to really sustain this. Otherwise, you will overflow. Your own attention span will continue to reduce by the day, and you will just not get enough out of it. Anyway,
so you wanted to take the point on students entering or new students?
Yes, college kids. I think college kids is a very interesting thing with demographic, which at IK we don't talk enough about. I think. In last few years, right, it was very difficult for college kids to find jobs. That is going to change in the next couple of years. As talent shortage deepens, right? 2021 was a massively shitty market for talent, right? In the sense, like it was completely employees market. Like employers got screwed left, right, and center, especially for engineering and marketing roles. So, and we see that continuing all the way through in 2022, right, as well. And as part of that, the hiring bias is going to shift from senior engineers to mid-tier to college students. So that's one thing. The other thing for college students is that maybe this is too late, but try and get degrees from some well-known places. Right? The degrees from well-known places are still going to matter, right, compared to other places. Like most college students who are struggling are struggling because the university they come from does not have a brand, right? And so if you are optimizing for any college degree, like optimize for brand, right? But generally we are going to see it improve for sure. There's just amount of talent that's going to be required is just going to be higher and higher as these companies continue to grow, right? That's one thing that we notice. But otherwise, still going to remain harder than an experienced engineer, right? Like for example, Amazon hired some in entire 2021, right? Amazon hired some like 50 people at L7 and above, right? Like Amazon, right? Think about like software engineering, Amazon, like who can approach anybody and everybody wants to work for kind of company, and so it is. So senior engineers have an easier time, right, getting jobs these days. And that's going to come down and down, right, further down like that. So anyway, that's sort of the point I wanted to make.
There was an interesting question that I wanted to answer. Nakita has posted on Q&A, and this is a really good book, Stop Reading the News by Rolf Dobelli. For those of you who don't know Rolf Dobelli, you should read all his books, right? He has a book on... it's one of my favorite books. I can't remember the name, but he has this book where he talks about the top 50 mental models that you can use to think better, right? Great book, great book. It talks about things like confirmation bias, recency, bunch of things that, basically where our mind fools us. It's a much shorter, crisper, easier version to read than, let's say, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, right? Which is also a fantastic book to read, by the way. Yep, Nikita, he writes very simple books. He takes very complex topics, but writes them in a very, very simple way. One of my favorite authors. There is a question from Vinod. Vinod says, "Hey, I have plans to run a startup in healthcare. Would you recommend a couple of resources where I can get and develop ideas?" Vinod, if you are starting a startup and you haven't read and some more generic, I'm going to give you an answer more for the process than for how to specifically get ideas. Read The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, and read. I think it's called Getting to Epiphany or 4 Steps to Epiphany. I'm not sure what I can't remember the name. But these are both books about how to get your startup from conceptualization to product market fit, right? I think it's called Getting to Epiphany. I'm not sure. They're similar, right?
Four steps to epiphany.
4 steps to epiphany.
Yeah,
So you remember who's the author?
No, I don't remember. I've read that also in a while. I'll just cheat and Google for it.
Yeah. Just post it. I don't remember who the author is, but anyway, Eric Ries was the student of that author, right? And
Stephen Blank.
Stephen Blank. Yeah, Steve Blank, right?
Yeah.
4 Steps to Epiphany by Steve Blank. And Eric Ries was his student, right? And then he took that, reframed it into, and used the Toyota Lean Manufacturing Framework, and he combined the Toyota Lean Manufacturing Framework with the 4 Steps to Epiphany and made it the Lean Startup, right? So it's a good book to read. Okay, let's look at any other questions.
Lots of questions now. Sorry.
Art of Thinking Clearly. That's the one I wanted to talk about. Thank you, AK. Art of Thinking Clearly by Rob Covelli. Wow. Good set of people reading very good books. Yeah.
Folks, age is a factor in tech industry. Yes. I mean, this is not a session on age, but we have written on Quora about age as well.
Som actually written a fantastic answer. You should look at his answer. It's a very, very good answer on ageism.
We had actually done a session on ageism as well. I think you might be able to find a video out there as well. But there was a group discussion on ageism and how do you tackle that. But it is a factor, for sure. It is a factor. However much I would like to deny it, it's certainly.
But I will mention this. We have seen people who are between the ages of 47 and 50 who have come to IK, who have taken the time to prepare and done incredibly well. In fact, one of our best instructors, right, was I think 46, 47 or around that, maybe 45, 46, when he actually did the course and moved from Intel to Facebook, right? Another one of our students, Jody, I think Jody was a little older, right? So maybe about 47, 48 when he did the course.
Jody Foster, he was 65 when he did the course.
65 when he did the course. Okay, and he ended up moving to SAP, right, from IBM.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of other people also who are older. Yes, age is a factor, but the thing is, companies require talent. The irony is that all companies are desperately looking for good talent, right? So if you can kind of prove that you are good and you do that via the interview process, then you have a really good shot. Okay. What are the other things? So I think Karthik had a very, very interesting question, not related to this, but I think we should take it. He says, what if I'm happy at my current job? I'm not switching these times. Am I at a big disadvantage in my career? Switching jobs is an interesting way to increase compensation, work at some of the newer companies, Karthik, but you should not switch for the sake of switching, right? We do see that one of the ways of staying relevant in tech is to switch. People change every few years because it also helps with compensation. I don't think there's a blanket rule, right? It does become harder to switch if you've not switched for a long time, right? So just keep that in mind. Nakita, good question. As there is huge demand for tech talent, will there be a demand for TA and HR jobs in the future? Will there be negative impact of technology like AI on jobs, TA and HR? Don't know, but great question. You're looking for talent. There are a whole bunch of tools. There are interesting tech tools that are now out streamlining the entire TA and HR process. I will tell you one interesting area that I think is going to play out in TA and HR, and I think that's a massive opportunity for folks to think of, and that is remote hiring, right? Globally remote hiring, which essentially is global sourcing. Where it is difficult to source people, there is no platform where it's easy to source people from all over the world, right? It's usually country specific. Indeed works well in the US, right? Naukri works well in India. In Southeast Asia, there are different platforms, right? Recruit in Japan, Recruit actually owns Indeed. But there is an opportunity for somebody to take a global first view of talent and sourcing and build an engine to help companies source and manage that entire pool. To some extent, Interview Kickstart is also playing into that trend, right? We are expanding internationally as well. And so we believe that over a period of time, Nikita, there are going to be these corridors for talent, right? People in Eastern Europe working in the US, working for the US, people in the US working for companies in China, and vice versa. I think there is going to be a significant impact. One of the, that's one area. Another area, which you're already seeing play out, is remote interviewing via video. One can imagine remote interviewing in a metaverse, right? Where you are immersed in the metaverse, you are interviewing with companies in the metaverse. Who knows, right? I think there are very interesting ways all of this could play out. Douglas is switching domains every time a new trend comes, a good idea. Vineet, okay, so this is an interesting question. Maybe you want to take this. Is switching domains every time a new trend comes out an interesting strategy in the tech world, like the current metaverse trend?
No, you just have to know what you're optimizing for. If you're optimizing for newer, faster growing careers, hence more money, like more driven people, and such as being on edge of the tech trends, then that is a strategy. If not, then that is not the right strategy. Generally, a good idea, my unsolicited advice would be to optimize for that some parts of your career. The first 15-20 years of a tech career, optimize to get to the next thing, and then stabilize at some pace. So that's but again, everybody thinks of it differently. I mean, there are friends I have who are at Google for last 20 years, right? And they are entirely fine with it, and they've switched team only once, right? And there are friends I have who have been at IBM. They know that IBM is not a tier 1 place anymore, but they are happy with what they have. So happiness is never a disadvantage, right? So
I think that, that's a very nice line. Happiness is never a disadvantage. I think though that we both feel that it is important to try and get to a top tech FANG plus kind of tech company, right? There are disproportionate advantages of trying to get to a FANG plus company. They pay really well. They provide good equity. They also provide a lot of other benefits like retirement benefits, taking care of family, things like that. And in many ways, these companies are now the signal in the noise, right? So coming out from these companies helps you a lot, right? Being from Google, being from Facebook, being from Uber, Airbnb, LinkedIn, Coinbase, this is a signal, right? So even if you decide to go and do something of your own later on, you want to switch, all of this helps. All right, we are bang on time right now. I think we are just about done. Let me see if there's anything else we can answer quickly. Okay, so guys, thank you all very much for joining. I know it's late in some parts of the world, so thank you all for staying up. We will be posting this on YouTube. We will be sharing parts of this on LinkedIn from time to time, and we will be following up on all of this, right, with much more detailed discussion on these trends, other areas, other things that we see are playing out in this market, both from a career as well as from an interview perspective. So, it's something that we've always wanted to do. We've just never gotten down to doing it. And so we are going to use this as the trigger to do that. We're going to try and do this once every couple of weeks, right? If we find that it's valuable and that we are able to do this often. We might increase it to maybe once a week, but once in 2 weeks is our aim for now. And so we'll be dropping videos on each of the trends we discussed in more detail over the next couple of weeks and months on these platforms. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and all the very best. Take advantage of these trends. Make the most of your career. Make sure you stay happy. As Swam just said, happiness is always an advantage. Cheers, guys. Good night. And
Thank
good
you.
day. And
Have a
hello
good night.
world. For the
Good
rest of
day.
you.
Hello world. Yes,
All right.
exactly. Hello world and good day.
Bye. Bye.